bless Japan, God bless the United States of America, and God bless our Navy. Thank you, everybody. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay, so this just happened, and it's massive. Trump signed an executive order that pauses all asylum applications in America. All of them, like effective immediately. He basically said, we're stopping the asylum process right now. You can't apply for asylum anymore. You're not getting in. And his base is absolutely losing their minds in celebration right now. They're posting online saying, finally, we're securing our borders. Finally, we're stopping the invasion. Finally, we're doing what we said we were going to do. And they're cheering. They're celebrating. They're saying this is what they voted for. This is what they wanted. But Washington is erupting with fury. Democrats are losing their minds. Legal experts are saying this is unconstitutional. Even some Republicans are saying, wait a minute, this is too extreme. And the courts are probably going to sue. So you've got this massive divide between Trump's base saying yes and Washington saying no. And come on, this is one of the most polarizing things Trump has done so far in his presidency. So here's what happened in detail. Trump signed this executive order that pauses all asylum applications nationwide. All of them, effective immediately. No more asylum applications, no processing, no intake, nothing. He's basically saying, if you're trying to apply for asylum in America, tough luck. You can't do it anymore. And he's also bringing back a policy called Remain in Mexico, which is from his first term. That policy basically says if you apply for asylum, you have to wait in Mexico while your case is processed. So you can't come into America. You're stuck in Mexico. And he's also adding to this by putting a 25% tariff on Canadian imports because he says Canada is letting fentanyl come across the border. So he's tying the asylum pause to a trade war with Canada. Like these are all connected in Trump's mind. Borders, tariffs, trade, asylum. It's all part of his America First agenda. But before we go any further, real quick, let's be honest. You can't really trust mainstream media anymore. That's why we built Pump Politics, to bring you real stories, real context, and no corporate spin. If you want to stay ahead of the headlines, join our free newsletter. We'll send the news straight to your inbox every day. Just click the link in the description to join. And if you just want to support what we're doing, join us. Be part of the community that actually cares about the truth. All right, let's get back to the video. And the reaction has been absolutely wild and immediate. His base is celebrating like crazy. Social media is exploding with Trump supporters saying this is what we wanted, this is what we voted for. Secure the border, stop asylum, stop the invasion. And they're using language like invasion. They're talking about migrants like they're invaders coming into America. And Trump is using that language too. He's saying we have an invasion at the border. We need to stop it. And his supporters are eating it up. They love it. They think this is great. But at the same time, Democrats are saying this is inhumane and cruel. Legal experts are saying this is unconstitutional. The ACLU is probably going to sue. States are probably going to sue. And you've got this moment where Trump is extremely popular with his base and extremely unpopular with Democrats and legal experts. So let's talk about the numbers because they're really important to understand the scale here. There have been 2.5 million plus border encounters this year. That's a lot of people trying to come into America. And Trump's supporters say that's too many. We need to stop it. We need to secure the border. We can't handle this many people. And Trump is saying, okay, I'm stopping asylum. I'm pausing the entire process. And his base is like, yes, finally, this is what we wanted. But here's the thing that's important. Most of these people who are coming to the border are fleeing violence. They're fleeing gang violence in Central America. They're fleeing drug cartel violence. They're fleeing dangerous situations. And they're applying for asylum because they think America will give them protection. And Trump is saying, no, we're not giving you protection. You can't apply, you're done. And critics are saying this is inhumane, this is cruel. These are people fleeing violence, and Trump is saying, we don't care, go back. And then there's the Venezuela situation that makes this even more complicated and serious. There are 9 million Venezuelan refugees right now. 9 million people have fled Venezuela because of the humanitarian crisis there. And with Trump's Venezuela threats and military buildup, more people might flee. So you could potentially have an even bigger refugee crisis. And Trump is saying, we're pausing asylum, so all these refugees can't apply. And that's creating a huge humanitarian crisis building. But Trump's base is saying, so what? They can't come here. We don't want them. We don't care about their problems. We want to secure the border. Come on. This is how divided America is right now on this issue. And here's what's wild and shows Trump's political calculation. Trump's base approval on immigration is like 90% or more. 90%. His supporters absolutely love what he's doing on immigration. They love the asylum pause. They love the Remain in Mexico policy. They love the tariffs on Canada. They think he's doing exactly what they voted for. He's securing the border. He's being tough on immigration. And that's what they want. But Democrats and legal experts are saying this is unconstitutional. This is going to get challenged in court. This is going to be a legal mess. So you've got this situation where Trump's doing exactly what his base wants, but he's probably going to lose in court because it's unconstitutional. And that's going to create more conflict and more division. That's the fundamental problem here. So let's actually break down what's happening with this asylum pause and why Trump is doing this. Because there's more to the story than just border security and immigration control. There's politics involved. There's trade policy. There's the whole America First agenda that Trump is pushing. And most people don't understand the full picture of what's really going on here. They see the headlines and they think, okay, Trump paused asylum. That's interesting. But this is actually way bigger and way more complicated than that simple headline. This is about reshaping America's entire immigration system. This is about trade policy with Canada. This is about Trump's relationship with his base. And this is about setting up legal battles that are going to dominate the next year of politics. This is foundational stuff. First, let's talk about why Trump is doing this right now in his second term. So Trump ran on securing the border as a core message. Build a wall, stop illegal immigration, secure the border. And his supporters loved that message back in 2024. And he did some stuff on the border during his first term, but he didn't completely stop immigration. People still came. People still applied for asylum. And Trump's supporters wanted more. They wanted him to do more. They wanted him to go further. They were not satisfied with what he did in his first term. So now, in his second term, Trump is doing more aggressive things. He's pausing asylum completely. He's bringing back Remain in Mexico. He's adding tariffs on Canada for fentanyl. And he's basically saying, we're going all in on border security. We're going to do everything we can to stop immigration. We're going to be as aggressive as possible. And his base is loving it. Like 90% of his supporters approve of what he's doing on immigration. That's a huge number. That's basically his entire base. So he's giving his base what they want. He's fulfilling the promises he made to them. And that's politically smart because his supporters are the people who got him elected. His supporters are the people who are going to vote for him in 2026. His supporters are the people who are going to keep him in power. So he's making sure his base stays energized and happy. And this asylum pause is doing that. It's making his base happy and keeping them energized. But here's the problem with what he's doing. It's probably unconstitutional, and it's going to get challenged in court, and Trump's probably going to lose. So Trump is doing something that his base loves, but something that the courts are probably going to overturn, and that's going to be a problem politically. Because if the courts overturn his asylum pause, then he's going to look weak. He's going to look like he can't follow through. He's going to look like he tried to do what his base wanted, but the courts stopped him, and that's going to hurt him politically. But also, Trump doesn't really care about that long-term consequence. Trump cares about looking tough right now. Trump cares about appearing to fight. Trump cares about making dramatic gestures that appeal to his base. And this asylum pause is all of those things. It's tough. It's dramatic. It's exactly what his base wants. Now let's talk about the humanitarian angle, because this is really important to understand the full picture. There are people fleeing violence. There are people fleeing gang violence and drug cartel violence and gang exploitation. And they're coming to America and applying for asylum. And they're saying, please, I need protection. I'm in danger. And the asylum system is designed to give protection to people who are fleeing persecution and violence. That's literally what asylum is for. It's for people fleeing dangerous situations. But Trump is saying we're not giving asylum anymore. We're pausing the whole system. So all these people who are fleeing violence, they can't apply. They're stuck. They're in dangerous situations and they can't get protection from America. And critics are saying this is inhumane. This is cruel. This is against international law. This violates human rights, and they're right. Trump's asylum pause is problematic from a humanitarian perspective. But Trump supporters don't care about that humanitarian angle. They're saying, we don't want these people in America. We don't care about their problems. They're not our responsibility. We need to secure our border. We need to protect America first. And that's the fundamental disagreement. Trump's supporters think America's responsibility is to America first. Don't worry about other people's problems. Worry about America. And Trump's critics think America has a moral responsibility to help people who are fleeing violence. America is supposed to be a beacon of hope. America is supposed to give asylum to people who need it. And Trump is violating that principle. And you can see both sides. You can understand the argument from both perspectives. But they're fundamentally opposed. And that's why this is so polarizing right now. Now let's talk about the legal challenges, because they're definitely coming and will be massive. The American Civil Liberties Union is going to sue, multiple states are going to sue, humanitarian organizations are going to sue, and they're all going to argue that this is unconstitutional, and they might be right, because Congress has authority over immigration policy, and the president can't just unilaterally pause the entire asylum system. That's probably overreach. That's probably unconstitutional. So Trump is probably going to lose in court. But he's doing it anyway because it appeals to his base. He knows it's probably unconstitutional, but he's doing it because it makes his base happy. And that's a calculation Trump is making. The short-term political gain from his base outweighs the long-term legal problem. And then there's the trade angle with Canada that's really important. Trump is adding a 25% tariff on Canadian imports because he says Canada is letting fentanyl come across the border. And that's true. There is fentanyl coming from Canada. But a 25% tariff is huge. That's a really big deal. That's going to increase prices for Americans. That's going to hurt Canadian businesses. That's going to hurt American businesses that rely on Canadian imports. And Trump is doing this to show that he's tough on the border. He's showing that he's not just stopping asylum. He's also putting pressure on Canada to stop fentanyl. And his base loves it. They think Trump is being tough. They think Trump is fighting back. But the economic consequences could be bad. Because if you add 25% tariffs on Canadian imports, prices go up. Consumer prices go up. That affects inflation. That affects people's wallets. And Trump is running on the economy. Trump is saying, I'm good for the economy. I'm going to lower inflation. But tariffs raise inflation. Tariffs raise prices. So Trump is contradicting himself. He's doing something popular with his base, but something that could hurt the economy. And that's a problem. And it echoes Trump's first term when he did steel tariffs and aluminum tariffs. And those tariffs hurt the economy, they raised prices, and then Trump had to deal with that politically, and now he's doing tariffs again, and he's probably going to face the same problems. Now let's talk about the refugee crisis that's looming on the horizon, because it's going to be serious. There are 9 million Venezuelan refugees right now. 9 million people have fled Venezuela because the country is in crisis. And with Trump's military threats against Venezuela and the potential for war, more people might flee. So you could have an even bigger refugee crisis developing. And Trump is pausing asylum. So all these refugees can't apply for asylum. So you've got a humanitarian crisis building. You've got millions of refugees potentially trying to come to America, and Trump is saying, you can't apply for asylum. You're stuck. And that's going to create chaos at the border. That's going to create a humanitarian crisis, and Trump's going to have to deal with that. And here's the thing that people don't understand. Trump is setting himself up for legal defeat. He's probably going to lose in court, and when he loses, his supporters are going to be angry. They're going to say, Trump promised to stop asylum and the court stopped him. And that's going to hurt Trump politically. So Trump is making a political calculation. He's doing something popular with his base now, but he's probably going to lose in court. And that's going to be a problem later. But Trump is okay with that because he wants to look tough and strong right now. He wants to show his base that he's fighting. And this asylum pause does that. It shows he's fighting even if he loses later in court. Okay, so let's break this down into the key things you need to understand about Trump's asylum pause and what it means for America and politics. This is important because it shows what Trump's priorities are and how he's governing, and it's going to have consequences that we're going to be dealing with for a long time. Number one, Trump is appealing to his base above everything else. Trump paused asylum and his base went crazy cheering. 90% of his supporters approve of what he's doing on immigration, and Trump is clearly prioritizing his base above everything else. He's not thinking about the courts. He's not thinking about the economy. He's not thinking about humanitarian concerns. He's thinking about what makes his base happy, and his base wants strict immigration. His base wants to stop asylum. His base wants to secure the border, and Trump is giving them what they want, and that's politically smart in the short term. But it's probably going to fail in the long term because the courts are going to strike down his asylum pause, and then his base is going to be angry, and Trump's going to look weak. Number two, this is probably going to get struck down in court. The asylum pause is probably unconstitutional. Congress has authority over immigration policy. The president can't just pause the entire asylum system. That's probably overreach. That's probably unconstitutional. And the courts are probably going to agree. The ACLU is going to sue. States are going to sue. And Trump is probably going to lose. So Trump is doing something that his base loves, but something that the courts are probably going to overturn. And that's a problem. Because if Trump loses in court, then he looks weak. He looks like he can't follow through on his promises. He looks like the courts are stopping him from doing what his base wants. And that's politically damaging for Trump. Number 3. This is going to hurt the economy. Trump is adding tariffs on Canada. That's going to raise prices. That's going to hurt consumers. That's going to hurt businesses. And Trump is running on the economy. Trump is saying, I'm good for the economy. But tariffs are bad for the economy. Tariffs raise prices. Tariffs cause inflation. So Trump is contradicting himself. He's doing something popular with his base, but something that could hurt the economy. And if the economy gets hurt, that's going to hurt Trump politically. So Trump is making a short-term political calculation that could have long-term economic consequences. Number 4. This is going to create a humanitarian crisis. With 9 million Venezuelan refugees potentially coming and Trump pausing asylum, you're going to have a humanitarian crisis. People are going to be stuck at the border. People are going to be fleeing violence and they can't apply for asylum. And that's going to create chaos at the border. That's going to create humanitarian problems. And Trump is going to have to deal with that. But Trump doesn't seem to care. Trump is focused on his base. Trump is focused on looking tough. And Trump is not thinking about the humanitarian consequences. So what happens next with this situation? Well, Trump is probably going to keep pushing on immigration. He's going to keep doing aggressive things. He's going to keep making his base happy. But he's probably going to lose in court. And when he loses, his base is going to be disappointed. And Trump is going to have to explain why the court stopped him. And Trump doesn't like losing. Trump doesn't like admitting defeat. So that's going to be a problem politically. And then there's the economic side that's concerning. If Trump keeps adding tariffs, prices are going to keep going up. And that's going to hurt people. And people are going to blame Trump for inflation. And that's going to hurt Trump politically. So Trump is setting himself up for economic problems by pursuing immigration crackdowns and tariff policies together. And the humanitarian crisis is going to get worse over time. With refugees building up at the border and Trump not allowing asylum, you're going to have thousands of people stuck. You're going to have humanitarian problems. You're going to have chaos. And Trump is going to have to deal with that. But Trump seems to think that if he just gets tough enough, if he just stops asylum, then the problem goes away. But that's not how this works. People are going to keep coming if they're fleeing violence. People are desperate. And Trump pausing asylum isn't going to stop that. It's just going to create a bigger problem. So basically, Trump is appealing to his base by doing aggressive immigration stuff, but he's probably going to face legal defeats. He's probably going to hurt the economy with tariffs. He's probably going to create a humanitarian crisis, and he's probably going to look weak when the courts strike down his asylum pause. So Trump is making a short-term political calculation that's probably going to hurt him long-term. And this is going to be a major issue in the 2026 midterms coming up. Democrats are going to use this against Trump. They're going to say, look, Trump tried to do something unconstitutional, and the court struck it down. He lost. He can't follow through. He's not as strong as he says he is. And they're going to use this to attack Trump. And it might work. Because right now, Trump's base loves what he's doing. But if he loses in court, that narrative changes. The narrative becomes, Trump tried to do something extreme and the court stopped him. And that's not as powerful politically. So pay attention to this closely, because how the courts handle this asylum pause is going to be really important. If the courts strike it down, that's a problem for Trump. If the courts uphold it, that's a win for Trump. But most legal experts think the courts are going to strike it down, so Trump is probably heading for a legal defeat. But he's doing it anyway because it makes his base happy right now, and that's the calculation Trump is making. Short-term base satisfaction over long-term legal and political problems. So buckle up. Because this asylum pause is just the beginning. Trump is probably going to do more aggressive immigration stuff. He's probably going to keep pushing the boundaries. And he's probably going to keep losing in court. And that's going to create a lot of conflict and division. And it's going to dominate the political conversation for the next year or more.